we see that they not only provide many resources for homeschooling, homeschool planning tools, expert coaches, discounts, but also legal protection. So for example, here, legal protection and attorney hotline, 24/7 consultation on homeschool issues such as public school districts, withdrawal issues, custody, dealing with truant officers and CPS, and member advocacy. So this is for intervention and homeschool support on discrimination issues like college, admissions, government agencies, hiring, testing, and more. On today's Teacher Mom podcast, I'm going to share 7 steps to begin homeschooling. And I will also share 3 bonus tips to help the transition be smoother. Step number 1. The first thing that you need to do is to learn what the homeschool laws are in your state. Depending on the state that you're in, there are different requirements to be met. So it's important to investigate this so that you know what types of documentation your state expects from you, any limitations you may have on how to teach in homeschool, such as when tutors can be used, if grandparents or some other family member can help with the process, if co-ops are an option. Don't worry if you don't know what a co-op is at this point, and possible requirements for hours, schedules, subjects, etc. Also, if your children have already been attending school, there may be requirements for how to pull them out of school. So it's important that you know that process as well. It's important to know what this information is, but don't let it overwhelm you. Simply store it in the back of your mind for the time being as you continue through the following steps of this video. One reliable place to find your state homeschool laws is at hslda.org. HSLDA stands for Homeschool Legal Defense Association. So when you go to hslda.org, like I am here, you're going to put your cursor on legal and go over to state homeschool laws. Once there, you're going to click on your state. The laws can be very different from state to state. In Arizona, for example, first you see an at-a-glance view. It tells you how many options the state has for homeschooling. For example, Florida and California, if I remember correctly, both have 3 types of homeschool options. The ages that state requires you to be homeschooling. Some states start at 5 years old, some states start at 8 years old. If notification is required, teacher qualifications, etc. So then go into complete details to see more information. There's a video presented by a lawyer that works with HSLDA, and then the description of what you need. So for Arizona, it says that you need to file an affidavit of intent with the school district superintendent, provide a copy of your child's birth certificate with certain and also certain information on the affidavit, teach the specific subjects. So in Arizona, it's reading, grammar, math, social studies, and science. And if you stop, to file a letter of termination. So that's it in Arizona. Now let's look at New York for another example. In this one, again, you have the same information here. Right off the bat in the at-a-glance section, you see that assessment is required, and there's a difference in the age level that you have to be homeschooling. So again, you have another video from the lawyer that you can watch if that's your state. You have to submit a notice of intent, and it gives you the description of when it has to be turned in, what information you need depending on the city, COVID protocols, and then submit an IHIP, an individualized home instruction plan. So in New York, here you are required to turn in a level of paperwork beyond saying, hey, I'm going to homeschool my child. And that paperwork, it tells you what it needs to involve, your child's name, age, grade level, a syllabi, curriculum materials, textbooks, and plan of instruction, dates for submission of quarterly reports, and the name of the person giving the instruction, etc. They also have more specific instructions for how many days or hours you have to teach. So for New York, you need to maintain record of attendance for each year to demonstrate that your child attended school 180 days per school year, and that there's also hourly attendance. They require 900 hours of school for 1st through 6th grade and 990 for 7th through 12th grade. Then, depending on the age level, they tell you what subjects you need to be teaching. Here you can see in this first section, this is what all grade levels have to learn, and then grades 1st through 6th, this is the list they have to learn. As you can see, the Arizona requirements are very different from the New York requirements. So that's why it's really important that you take a look at what your state requirements are. Now finally, some states like Florida give you different options. So it says options for homeschool 3. And when you look at their options, I'm not going to read them all, but I just want you to see you have 1, 2, and 3. And when you click on it, it gives you the description of what that option entails and how to exercise it. Or you could choose option 2 or option 3. And it tells you exactly what it expects you to do for those options. Now, the second step to begin homeschooling is to become a member of a homeschool legal association or coalition. Now, why does this matter? Why is it really important? The reason why is because many of these associations or coalitions help protect you from those who may be ignorant about homeschool laws. I'll give you an example of that in a moment. Some states have a local association or coalition, like Texas, for example, has the Texas Homeschool Coalition. On their website, thsc.org, you can see that when you join, these are the things that they offer. We see that they not only provide many resources for homeschooling, homeschool planning tools, expert coaches, discounts, but also legal protection. So for example, here, legal protection and attorney hotline, 24/7 consultation on homeschool issues such as public school districts, withdrawal issues, custody, dealing with truant officers and CPS, and member advocacy. So this is for intervention and homeschool support on discrimination issues like college, admissions, government agencies, hiring, testing, and more. They also keep you up to date on changing laws and such in that state. When you're looking at these different associations, one thing to keep in mind is that the age level that you're teaching may influence your decision. For example, the Texas Homeschool Coalition has this discount of $200 off 49-week of dual credit at-home study plan. If you have a high school student that is ready to start college courses, that might be something that you want to look into, and that is financially also beneficial for you. Or you can join an association that's nationwide, like HSLDA. HSLDA is the site that we were using to look at the homeschool regulations. This is especially helpful if you're a family that moves around a lot from state to state, or you know that it's a possibility in the future. My husband and I followed this route when we moved back to the United States initially, because we didn't know where we would be moving in the next year, year and a half, once we got other details settled. Now, each entity may have different benefits, however. Some of the benefits that I personally like about HSLDA are they often provide templates for forms that you might need. For example, in Arizona, I needed an affidavit to turn in to tell that I was going to be homeschooling, and they had that form. I was able to download it and fill in the missing information. Also, you can email them if you have a specific question and get a timely response from a lawyer that works at HSLDA. You can also receive student and teacher IDs that may be needed to get discounts at certain places. They provide resources and discounts for different programs, just as the Texas Homeschool Coalition did, but the discounts may be different and used for different things. They're economical, in my opinion, and they have a team of lawyers that help interpret the law and go to bat for you if needed. So here's the example I promised of how these organizations help to protect you. In Pennsylvania, a family followed state laws by filing the necessary information with the school district, which included learning objectives for their son, who was already beyond the compulsory school age for his state. The objectives included the only high school subjects the student had left to graduate. As such, the district officials said the list of learning objectives were missing subjects. Even though the mother explained the perfectly valid and legal reasons for those missing subjects, the district responded by filing a complaint accusing the mother of violating Pennsylvania's compulsory school attendance statute, hence summoning the family to court. The family contacted HSLDA. In court, the lawyer demonstrated not only how the family did comply with the law, but also how the school district had not gone through the correct process to address their concern and hence were acting contrary to Pennsylvania law themselves. After which the judge found the mother not guilty. For another example, see the link in the description. I simply share that with you so you can see how there may be circumstances that happen where you're going to need some type of legal support. Being a member of one of these associations provides that support when you need it most. Step number 3 is very to the point. Don't buy anything quite yet. What I mean is, don't buy and use a material just because your friend, neighbor, or family member is using it and loves it. It may be a great fit for them, but it might be a horrible one for you. I have seen this happen on multiple occasions, and it made homeschooling very frustrating for the parent teaching and the children. Instead, continue to step 4 and do the following. Consider the following questions before looking for options. First, if you had to put your child in school, but could choose from any type of school experience imaginable, what would it be like? Would it be project interest-based or mapped out by a curriculum, hands-on experiences, mostly desk work, travel-oriented, academically rigorous? How would learning be documented, tests, projects, presentations? Would it be year-round, only mornings, long summer vacation, etc.? Write down in as much detail as you can your ideal education experience. Have this in mind as we continue. By the way, it's okay if your vision changes over time. I know mine did. Now at this point, many websites or homeschool guides talk about the 5 homeschool styles or the 10 homeschool methods. Then they go on to describe them and try to help you figure out which one of them you fit into. Kind of like those personality tests you had to do in college or elsewhere. But the truth is, there are as many homeschool styles as there are homeschool families, and you really don't need to fit into any of them to get yourself going. To figure out what works best for you, consider this as the parent doing the homeschooling. First off, which do you prefer? Getting directly involved in learning with your children, or more of a student-independent type homeschool, or do you prefer a mix of both? Second, this one being kind of like the previous one, level of parenting instruction. On a scale of 1 to 10, how much do you want to be directly teaching your children? If you love the idea and want to be in the learning with them, you would be a 10. If you prefer to only do what is absolutely necessary, mostly supervising, then go toward 1. What subjects are you super passionate about? On the other hand, what subjects do you dislike greatly and can't imagine having to teach them? For example, I hear a lot of people refer to math this way, or maybe writing, or science, etc. Next, what are some of your personal needs? Do you love being at home and don't feel you need to go out much? Or do you like to get out a lot and interact with people? Do you have income needs that require you to work while homeschooling your children? How does that affect your availability and the level of independence you need from your kids? Do you love structure and consistency, or do you prefer variety and spontaneity? Or are you a mix of both, and to what extent? Next, what kind of budget do you have available for homeschooling resources? Now, thinking about homeschooling as a whole, what things make you cringe about the thought of homeschooling? Maybe crafts or clutter? And what things get you super excited about the idea of homeschooling? Now let's turn the focus to some questions about your children. 1, how many children do you have and how old are they? Obviously, homeschooling is probably going to look different if you have a toddler in the house or if you have only high schoolers in the house. Do your children love being at home or going out? Consider their personality and their learning styles. Now, if you don't know what learning styles are, don't worry, you don't need to. I'm going to give you some descriptors to help you think through that. Are they very talkative? Are they active? Do they like to move a lot? Their movement is actually very beneficial. Does your child have a lot of energy? Or perhaps your child is very reflective, thinks about things for a long time. They're observant. Or do they like to learn hands-on? Are they self-motivated? Do they love learning through listening to books, etc.? Do they love exploring? You get the idea. Think about your child and how you see them learning the most and what their personality is like. Now, as another side note to this point though, if you don't know how to answer this question, don't panic. Just keep observing your child through the next year or 2 and you'll get more clarity as you go through this homeschool journey. Next question. What did or do each member of your family love and hate about school and or learning each subject? Consider how you enjoyed learning each subject most. For example, I learned the most in history and enjoyed it the most when I got to read historical fiction books. If your children haven't been in a traditional school setting because they're still small, base this on your observations. But if your children are older, and especially if they have already attended a school, interview them on this, ask them about it, and let them give you the answer. Okay, so now that you've taken time to think through these questions, to think through what your family is like, what each child is like, what your personal needs are, what your children's needs are, and you know your state regulations, you can begin to consider what scenarios and types of material may work best for your family. A few examples are, some states specify teaching your children in your home. Many also specify, as we saw in the New York example, 180 school days or 900 school hours or both. But if you're a people person who likes to get out of the house a lot, being at home all day, 5 days a week, may feel very stifling. In this case, considering a year-round school calendar that allows you to perhaps only do school 4 days a week or 4 hours a day, and then be able to spend the rest of the time out with your kids may be the right fit for your crew. Another example is I recognized I really enjoyed learning about history through historical fiction and biographies like I mentioned before. I kept that in mind when I started researching curricula. In that process, I looked for texts that were engaging because they read like a story. In fact, I actually did find a social studies curriculum that included fiction books to support the time periods being learned about. A final example is maybe you like the concept of teaching unit studies, but you also prefer your kids to mostly be independent in their studies, or you realize that in your scenario it just isn't realistic for one reason or another. Then you keep that in mind to look for something that will be a better fit. Step 6. As you consider what type of material to buy and you begin your research and your search for that material, one great place to start is a homeschool convention that may be in your area. These conventions are so beneficial for so many reasons because you get to see many, not all, but many materials in person and take a look at them and talk to the representatives, ask them questions about the program and the strengths and the weaknesses. But you can also compare them to what you've already researched prior to going to a convention. They usually have seminars, they have keynote speakers and other seminars that you can break out into, and these seminars can be really helpful. For example, I mentioned learning styles, so that you can continue to identify your child's needs. And they have other things if you have high school students talking about scholarships or how to deal with technology, etc. It depends on the convention, what topics will be there, but you can typically find a lot of really great things to help you make great choices in your homeschool journey. Step number 7. Start slow the first few weeks, when possible. It can be tempting to lay out a beautiful schedule for school days and weeks, but oftentimes it can be very advantageous to start slow and build up over the first weeks of school, and as you're building up, create that schedule as you see what's working and what isn't. Remember that anything new takes getting used to, and when there are too many new things at once, it can be very overwhelming for children and parents. So consider these options instead. Option 1, choose 1 or 2 areas you feel most prepared for and do these only the first few days. Then add 2 more areas and so on. Option 2, give your children 3 to 4, depending on the age, choices and ask what they would like to begin with. However, I wouldn't do this with kindergarten or first grade. Second grade and on should be fine. So taper things so that by around week 3, everything is in place. Doing this will give you and your children time to adjust. It will also give you a chance to make observations about how the days flow, things you didn't expect, etc. That way you can make adjustments. That brings me to the bonus tips. Bonus tip number 1, be an observer of your children. Don't be afraid to make adjustments throughout the semester on what you see working or not. Sometimes we feel this unnecessary pressure that because we chose something, we have to stick with it and finish it out through the year. But oftentimes, it's just a headache for everyone, and you're better off going, wait, something here isn't working, let me shift, let me adjust. Bonus tip number 2, when possible, give your children choices. Your children will be more self-driven when they feel they have some control. Choices could be what order to do their studies in, where they want to work, within reason, what time to start their schoolwork, etc. And bonus tip number 3, don't try to make home look like a traditional school. For example, sitting in desks, no wiggling or noise. Be flexible, pen versus pencil, for example. With this idea of not making home look like school, remember that children learn in so many different ways. And since we're not in a classroom with 20, 30 students, we don't have the same limitations that we do in a classroom where everyone has to be quiet so no one gets distracted, etc. Having to sit in a desk, so no one gets distracted, etc. If your child starts working here and they have to go to the bathroom and they come back and then they want to go and work at the kitchen counter, within what you're able to do in your house, allow that flexibility. Allow them to have those options and opportunities, and they will learn better for it. I hope that these tips for how to start homeschooling have been beneficial to you and given you a clear guide on how to get moving forward.